Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to see why literal translation fails. Well, some people think that translating entails transferring word from one language to another. So, this misconception of translation actually states that bilingualism underpins translation. So, when you know the different equivalence of words, you can easily translate. This conception should be abandoned very quickly because translation is not underpinned by bilingualism. Translation is not a matter of transferring word equivalence from one language to another. In this video, I will tell you why structural translation, which is a kind of literal translation which entails copying the source language structure into the target. I will show you why this type of translation fails. In my book titled De la sémantique à la traduction, une approche sémantico-morphosyntaxique de la traduction, I underscore what I call the semantic and morphosyntactic approach to translation. This approach is underpinned by what I call the inferential theory. So in this video, I will give you the main principle which underlie the inferential theory. Why do I talk about the inferential theory? This is a very important theory. Let's say this is a continuation of the interpretative theory raised by Danica Seleskovich and Marianne Lederer. So this is just the continuation of this interpretative theory. Well, my inferential theory is actually rest on four main assumptions. Namely, the first assumption is translation deal with content, not linguistic form. Translation deals with content instead of linguistic form. That is the first assumption. The second assumption is that meaning arises from raising or underscoring the intention behind the message. This allows us to allude to generative grammar, because when we say meaning is derived from underscoring the intention behind the message, this means that we have the structure message, we have the deep structure, we have the structure message, which is the message which is visible, the message which we can harvest when looking into the text, the utterance that we have in front of us. And we have the deep structure message, which underlies the intention behind the message. So we are saying in the second assumption that meaning arises from raising the intention behind the message. That is the second assumption. The third assumption is that when structure contradicts meaning, we have to use interpretation, and that interpretation leads to inference. So, as long as meaning does not contradict, as long as the structure does not contradict meaning, we do not interpret. But interpretation starts once the structure, that is the surface structure, is different from the deep structure, that is the message clearly expressed is different from the message implied. So in other words, when there is divorce between the surface message and the intention behind that message, at that time we make use of inference. That's why we talk about inference. That's the third point. The final assumption of my inferential theory is that translation is basically a decision-making process based on disambiguation, because language is characterized by ambiguities, and there are some structural patterns which involve ambiguities. We have different types of ambiguities that are discussed in that book. We are not focusing on those ambiguities in this video. That said, let's come back to the first principle, which states that translation deals with content, not linguistic form. What we have to underscore here is that translation is contextual, not structural. Contextual and ideational. That is, we translate ideas based on context, because discursive production is carried out in context. So when we are analyzing, when we are breaking down an utterance, we regard that utterance in terms of what the utterance want to say. That is, what is the intention behind the utterance. And we have to make sure that we get the intention before we translate. That's why we say that we are not translating the utterance, we are translating the content or the message which is implied in that utterance. So, translation is contextual or contextualized. So, decontextualized translation amount to structural translation, which is not acceptable. And being bilingual is not tantamount to being a translator. That is where bilingualism fails in translation studies. If we take let us take a simple example. If we say, for instance, you are killing me, we cannot just translate that sentence into English by saying tu me tues. This would be a what I call structural, or let's say literal or structural translation. We have to check the context of this sentence. When we say you are killing me in English, depending on context, as I say, translation is contextual. We can have three types of translation for this utterance. If we are talking about amusement, and if the context is, if we are talking about amusement, then you are going to say, tu me fais mourir de rire, for you are killing me. This means you are making me laugh. If we are talking about amusement, this is the first context. The second context would be, if we are expressing frustration, then you are killing me will mean tu m'exaspères. And the third context will be, for instance, we are talking about emotional pain. Then if we say you are killing me when talking about emotional pain that I feel, then you are killing me will mean tu me crèves le cœur. So, in a nutshell, what we are saying here is that translation, under our first assumption, under the first assumption of our inferential theory, we are saying that translation deals with content, not form. So we are not translating the form or the structure, but we are translating the content, because as per the semantic and morphosyntactic approach to translation, the basic principle is that the content command the form, or the ideas command the structure. That's why we talk about ideational translation or well thought out translation or rational translation. So this rational translation can be contextualized. So it depends on the context. That's why bilingualism, which necessarily does not mean having been trained as a translator, cannot be a cannot be a, let's say, a rule in order to be successful in translation. So that's what we can say concerning this video. I hope you like it, and please don't forget to share and give your comment under the comment section below. Thank you for watching.